She was trapped between life and death, until an angel showed her the way to freedom. I don't remember how I got here. One moment, I was crossing the street after work, the sharp autumn wind biting in my face, my phone buzzing with messages, and my mind tangled with the day's endless demands. The next, I woke up in a place that wasn't here, but it wasn't anywhere I could name either. The first thing I noticed was the light. It wasn't sunlight, nor the harsh fluorescence of an office or hospital. It was soft, glowing, and impossibly even, stretching across a space that seemed infinite. There were no walls, no ceiling, no horizon. Just light. I sat up, instinctively brushing at my clothes, though they seemed strangely pristine. No dust, no stains, not even the scuff marks from my worn-out boots. That was when the panic began to creep in, a quiet unease that swelled with each passing second. Where was I? I tried to piece it together. I remembered leaving the office, weaving through the crowd at the crosswalk. The light had turned green, but there was a honk, a blaring sound that sliced through the city noise. And then, nothing. My chest tightened. Was I dreaming? Dead? My pulse thudded in my ears as I stood and turned in circles, trying to find something, anything, that could anchor me to reality. That's when I saw them. At first, I thought they were other people, scattered figures moving in the distance. But as I squinted, I realized they weren't quite real. Their forms were shadowy, translucent, like smoke trapped in the shape of a person. They drifted aimlessly, some gliding, others pacing in endless loops. None of them seemed to notice me. I tried to call out to one of them, my voice cracking. "Hello? Can you hear me?" No response. I stepped closer to the nearest figure, a tall man with blurred features. He was muttering to himself, words that sounded like a jumble of static. When I reached out to touch him, my hand passed right through. My breath caught. I stumbled back, my heart racing now. This wasn't a dream. It was too vivid, too strange. But if it wasn't a dream, then what was it? I turned again, scanning the endless expanse of light for some kind of exit, a door, a window, anything. That's when I saw her. At first, she was just a flicker at the edge of my vision, a figure standing perfectly still while the others wandered. But as I walked closer, the air around her seemed to shimmer, as if the light itself bent to her presence. She was tall, toweringly so, with a commanding presence that made me feel like a child in her shadow. Her wings were the first thing I truly focused on. They weren't the fluffy, feathery kind I'd seen in paintings or movies. These were radiant, almost alive, glowing with a brilliance that was both beautiful and terrifying. The edges seemed to pulse with energy, like the afterimage of a lightning strike. But it was her eyes that froze me in place. They were piercing, impossibly deep, as though they could see every part of me, my fears, my hopes, the secrets I kept even from myself. Her gaze wasn't unkind, but it was unyielding, as if daring me to look away. "You don't belong here," she said, her voice resonating like the low hum of a harp string. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the air with a certainty that left no room for argument. My mouth opened, but no words came out. She stepped closer, her wings folding slightly behind her. The light around her seemed to dim, though not in a way that made the room darker. Instead, it felt like she was pulling the focus onto herself, as though nothing else mattered in that moment. "But you're here," she continued, tilting her head slightly. "Which means you're stuck." "Stuck?" I managed to choke out, my voice barely above a whisper. "What do you mean? Where am I?" She studied me for a moment, her expression unreadable. "You're between," she said finally. "Not here, not there. Caught in the space where life meets death." The words hit me like a physical blow. My knees wobbled, and I almost stumbled, but her hand shot out, steadying me before I could fall. Her touch was warm, grounding, like sunlight on bare skin. Am I dead? The question felt absurd as it left my lips, but I had to ask. "Not yet," she said, her voice softening just slightly. "But you came close enough to cross over, And now you must decide. Decide what? Her wings shifted, spreading wide for a moment before folding back again. Whether to stay or to go. Whether to fight your way back to the life you've left behind or to let go of it entirely. My mind reeled. Stay? Go? Fight? I didn't even understand what she meant, let alone how I was supposed to make a decision like that. I shook my head, my hands clenching into fists at my sides. I don't understand. Why me? Why am I here? She stepped closer, her gaze softening ever so slightly. You're here because you've been standing on the edge for a long time. Even before today, her words sent a shiver down my spine. What edge? The edge between living and existing, she said simply. You've been drifting through your life, weighed down by things you don't even realize you're carrying. Regrets, fears, doubts. They've tethered you here, holding you back even when your soul yearns to move forward. I wanted to argue, to protest that she was wrong, but deep down, I knew she wasn't. Her words felt like truths I'd been avoiding for years, truths that had been lurking in the corners of my mind, waiting for a moment like this to surface. Well, what am I supposed to do? I asked, my voice trembling. How do I move forward? The angel smiled faintly, a glimmer of something like pride flickering in her eyes. First, you need to understand why you're here. You need to see the chains that bind you. Before I could respond, she reached out and placed her hand gently on my forehead. The moment her skin touched mine, the light around us began to shift, dissolving into fragments of color and sound. The endless expanse of white was replaced by something else entirely, memories. I wasn't standing in the waiting room anymore. I was standing in my childhood bedroom, the peeling wallpaper and scattered toys so vivid it was as if I had truly gone back in time. And there I was, a younger version of myself, sitting on the floor, tears streaming down my face as I held a broken toy in my hands. This, the angel's voice echoed around me, is where it began. I stared at the scene, my chest tightening as the first pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. And for the first time, I started to understand. The moment her hand touched my forehead, the light dissolved around me. It wasn't gradual or subtle. It was instantaneous, like stepping from one world into another. I wasn't in the endless room anymore. I was standing in my childhood bedroom, and it was like I'd been dropped into the past, fully intact. The details hit me all at once. The faint smell of old books and crayons, the peeling blue wallpaper with little stars I used to trace with my fingers when I couldn't sleep. The bed with its lopsided blankets, one side perpetually slipping off the mattress. The toy box, lid askew, with its contents spilling out onto the carpet. And then there was me, a younger version of myself, maybe 6 or 7, sitting cross-legged on the floor. My small hands clutched a broken toy, a doll with one arm snapped off and stuffing poking out of its side. Tears streaked my face, and I was crying the way only a child can, loudly, without shame, my entire body trembling with the force of it. The angel's voice came from somewhere behind me, soft but unwavering. This is where it started. I turned to face her, but she wasn't there. Her voice echoed around me, omnipresent yet distant. What started? I asked, my voice trembling. Look, she said, as if the answer was obvious. I turned back to the scene, unsure of what I was supposed to see. It was just me, a child, crying over a broken toy. It didn't seem particularly significant. I'd had plenty of moments like this growing up. Who didn't? But then, like a camera zooming out, the scene widened. The door to my bedroom was open just a crack, and outside, I could hear voices. My parents, arguing in hushed tones, their words sharp but muffled. I couldn't make out everything they were saying, but I caught fragments. Can't keep doing this. Never enough. You don't even try. The younger me didn't seem to notice. She was too wrapped up in her own little world, the kind of bubble only children can create for themselves. But I, the adult me, heard every word, and it hit me like a blow to the chest. You heard them, the angel said, her voice closer now, though I still couldn't see her. Even if you didn't understand, you felt it, and it planted something inside you. I shook my head, stepping back from the scene as if I could distance myself from the memory. I don't see how this matters. It's just my parents arguing. Every kid hears their parents argue at some point. The angel didn't answer right away. Instead, the scene shifted. The bedroom dissolved, replaced by another memory. This time I was older, maybe 13 or 14, and sitting at the kitchen table. My mother stood at the sink, her back to me, scrubbing a plate with a kind of aggression that didn't match the task. The silence between us was thick, the kind that made you want to fill it with anything, even nonsense. But I didn't say a word. I just sat there, picking at the edge of the tablecloth, pretending not to notice the tension radiating from her like heat from a stove. "What do you think you're doing?" Her voice snapped, startling me. I looked up, confused. "You've been sitting there for 20 minutes. Don't you have homework? Chores? Something useful to do?" I finished my homework, I stammered. "Then go do something productive. Sitting around isn't going to get you anywhere in life." The word stung, even now, watching it from the outside. At the time, I had just muttered an apology and slunk away to my room, my cheeks burning with shame. But as the memory played out before me, I realized it wasn't the words themselves that had hurt. It was the way she said them, as if my existence was an inconvenience. "You learned something that day," the angel said, her voice calm but pointed. "Something you've carried with you ever since." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The truth was staring me in the face. The memory shifted again, faster this time, as if the angel was flipping through the pages of a book. Scene after scene played out before me, moments I had forgotten or ignored, each one a tiny thread weaving itself into the larger fabric of my life. There I was at 17, standing in front of a guidance counselor who told me that my dream of being an artist wasn't practical. I nodded politely, pretending to agree, but inside, something cracked. Then I was 22, working a dead-end job I hated because it was safe. The spark I'd once had for painting had dulled into nothing more than a hobby, something I only indulged in when no one was watching. And finally, I was back in the present, or close to it, standing on the sidewalk, staring down at my phone while the world blurred around me. The messages on the screen were trivial, reminders, work emails, social media notifications. But they felt heavy, like weights pulling me down, tethering me to a life I wasn't sure I even wanted anymore. "You see it now, don't you?" the angel said. I turned to face her, and this time, she was there. Her expression was gentle but unyielding, her wings glowing softly in the dim light of the memory. "See what?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "The chains," she said simply. "The ones you've wrapped around yourself link by link, year by year. The doubt, the fear, the belief that you're not enough, that you'll never be enough. It's all here." I looked back at the memories, the threads weaving themselves together into a tapestry that seemed to shimmer in the air around me. Each thread was a moment, a feeling, a decision I'd made or didn't make because of the things I'd come to believe about myself. "So what do I do?" I asked, my voice trembling. "How do I break free?" The angel stepped closer, her wings folding behind her. "First, you have to see the full picture. You have to face it, all of it. Only then can you decide what to do next." I wanted to argue, to tell her that I'd already seen enough. But deep down, I knew she was right. I couldn't move forward if I didn't understand what was holding me back. "Okay," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Show me." She placed her hand on my shoulder, and the memories shifted again, faster this time, like a film reel spinning out of control. I braced myself for what was to come, knowing that whatever lay ahead, it wouldn't be easy. But for the first time, I felt a flicker of hope, a tiny spark that maybe, just maybe, I could find my way out of the darkness. When the memories stopped spinning, the world around me shifted again. The softness of the glowing light, the comforting edges of nostalgia, and even the angel's steady presence vanished. I was left standing alone in a new place, and I immediately knew I wasn't going to like it. The air was cold, sharp, almost metallic, and the ground beneath my feet was slick and uneven. I glanced around, trying to make sense of where I was. It was a maze, a massive, endless labyrinth with towering walls made of glass. Not clear, sparkling glass, but warped and clouded, like old mirrors that had lost their shine. Each wall reflected pieces of me, but none of the images were whole. One pane showed me as a child, clutching that broken toy again. Another showed me sitting at the kitchen table under my mother's critical gaze. Others reflected my adult self, tired, hunched over my phone, scrolling mindlessly, the lines of stress etched deep into my face. I didn't want to look at them. I didn't want to see myself that way. But there was nowhere else to look. The walls surrounded me, twisting and turning in every direction, creating a maze so vast that the end felt impossibly far away. "This is your labyrinth," the angel's voice said, echoing from somewhere unseen. I turned, searching for her, but she wasn't there. Only the glass walls and their endless reflections. "Where are you?" I called out, my voice trembling. "Why aren't you here?" Her reply was calm, but it carried a weight that made my chest tighten. "This part is yours to face alone. The labyrinth is made of your memories, your fears, your regrets. No one else can walk it for you." I swallowed hard, my hands clenching in a fist at my sides. What am I supposed to do? Just wander around until I figure it out. "Find the heart," she said simply. "The heart of the labyrinth. Only then will you understand." Before I could respond, her voice faded, leaving me alone with the maze. I stood there for a long moment, staring down the nearest corridor. It stretched on endlessly, the glass walls curving and twisting in ways that made me dizzy. The reflections on either side shifted as I moved, each one showing a different version of myself. Some were younger, smiling, happy. Others were older, tired, worn down by life. I took a step forward, then another. The sound of my footsteps echoed faintly, the only noise in the otherwise silent maze. My pulse pounded in my ears as I turned a corner, only to find more glass, more reflections. One panel caught my attention. It showed me at 25, standing in front of a blank canvas. My paints were spread out on the table in front of me, but my hands were still, my brush hovering in midair. I could see the tension in my shoulders, the hesitation in my eyes. I remembered that moment vividly. I had been trying to paint something, anything, but nothing felt good enough. Eventually, I had walked away, leaving the canvas blank. The reflection shifted, and I saw myself sitting in a cubicle, typing furiously on a keyboard. The contrast was stark, the colors muted. The painting me had been hesitant, but alive. The office me was robotic, detached. I turned away from the panel, my stomach twisting. The maze wasn't just reflecting my memories. It was showing me the choices I'd made, the paths I hadn't taken. It was impossible not to wonder what might have been, and the weight of that thought pressed down on me as I continued walking. The farther I went, the more suffocating the maze became. The glass walls seemed to close in, their distorted reflections looming over me. Some showed moments I recognized. Fights with friends, missed opportunities, times I'd let fear or doubt hold me back. Others were more abstract, blurry scenes that felt familiar but distant, like dreams I couldn't quite remember. I turned corner after corner, each step feeling heavier than the last. The maze was endless, and I was beginning to lose track of how long I'd been wandering. Minutes? Hours? Days? Time didn't seem to exist here. All I knew was that I was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. At one point, I reached a dead end. The glass wall in front of me was different, clearer than the others, almost like a real mirror. When I looked into it, I saw myself as I was now, tired, scared, and utterly lost. "What do you want from me?" I whispered, staring into my own eyes. The reflection didn't answer, of course. But as I turned to retrace my steps, I noticed something I hadn't seen before, a faint glow coming from another corridor. It wasn't bright, just a soft, golden light that seemed to pulse gently, like a heartbeat. I followed it. The light grew stronger as I walked, illuminating the glass walls around me. The reflections shifted, becoming less chaotic and more focused. They still showed me, always me, but now the moments felt different. They weren't just about pain or regret. They were about perseverance, strength, and growth. One panel showed me at 16, standing up to a teacher who had underestimated me. Another showed me comforting a friend after a loss, my arm around their shoulders as they cried. Still another showed me alone in my room, painting late into the night, my hands stained with color. The memories were a balm, a reminder that I wasn't defined solely by my mistakes or failures. I had struggled, yes, but I had also fought, loved, and created. The light grew brighter, and I knew I was getting closer to the heart of the labyrinth. My steps quickened, the heaviness in my chest easing with each stride. The maze felt less oppressive now, the walls no longer looming, but simply guiding me forward. Finally, I reached it, the heart of the labyrinth. It wasn't what I expected. There was no grand revelation, no treasure waiting to be discovered. Just a small, open space with a single pedestal in the center. On the pedestal sat a mirror, its surface smooth and clear. I approached cautiously, my reflection coming into view as I got closer. But this time, the image staring back at me wasn't fragmented or distorted. It was whole. I saw myself, not as I wanted to be, not as I feared I was, but as I truly was. Flawed, yes, but also resilient. Scarred, but still standing. Human. You've found it, the angel's voice said. And this time, she was there. She stood at the edge of the clearing, her wings folded neatly behind her. Her expression was calm, almost proud. I looked at her, then back at the mirror. What does it mean? I asked. It means you've seen the truth, she said. The labyrinth isn't about punishing you. It's about showing you who you are, every part of you, the good and the bad. Only by facing it can you decide how to move forward. I turned back to the mirror, my reflection steady and unwavering. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. I think I understand now, I said softly. The angel nodded. Then you're ready for the next step. The labyrinth melted away, leaving me standing in a new place. For a moment, I thought I was back in the endless white room where this strange journey had begun. But as my eyes adjusted, I realized the space was different. It was smaller, more contained, though no less disorienting. The light here was softer, warmer, casting everything in a gentle glow. At the center of the room was a mirror. It wasn't like the warped, distorted panels from the labyrinth. This mirror was clear and flawless, its surface smooth as still water. It stood tall on an ornate frame that seemed out of place in the otherwise featureless space. The moment I saw it, a sense of dread crept into my chest. I knew, without being told, that this mirror wasn't ordinary. It wasn't just going to show me my reflection. It was going to show me something far deeper. The angel appeared beside me, her presence as steady and grounding as always. Her wings were folded, her expression unreadable. This is the mirror of truth, she said, her voice calm but firm. You've reached the heart of your journey. I glanced at her, then back at the mirror. What am I supposed to do? Look, she said simply. See yourself as you truly are. I hesitated, my feet rooted to the spot. The labyrinth had been hard enough, walking through my memories, reliving my mistakes and failures. But this felt different, more personal, more final. What if I didn't like what I saw? What if the reflection confirmed all the fears I'd been carrying my entire life? I don't know if I can, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. The angel placed a hand on my shoulder, her touch warm and reassuring. The truth is already inside you, she said. The mirror doesn't create it. It only shows you what you've been hiding from yourself. And no matter what you see, you'll survive it. You've already survived so much." Her words struck a chord deep within me, and I felt a flicker of courage. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward until I was standing directly in front of the mirror. At first, all I saw was my reflection. Just me. My hair a little messy, my eyes tired, my shoulders slouched slightly. It was so ordinary that for a moment I felt almost relieved. But as I continued to stare, the reflection began to change. It started with the eyes. They seemed to deepen, becoming windows into something far beyond the surface. I saw flashes of my life within them, moments I thought I'd forgotten, feelings I thought I'd buried. The image in the mirror rippled like water, and suddenly, it wasn't just showing me as I was now. It was showing me every version of myself I'd ever been. I saw myself as a child, clutching that broken toy, tears streaming down my face. I saw myself as a teenager, sitting alone in my room, trying to drown out the sound of my parents arguing in the next room. I saw myself as an adult, standing in front of a blank canvas, the weight of self-doubt pressing down on me so heavily that I couldn't bring myself to lift the brush. Each version of me looked back with eyes that carried the same questions. Am I enough? Will I ever be enough? The reflection shifted again, and now I saw the times I'd hidden from, the moments I wasn't proud of, the sharp words I'd said to people I loved, the opportunities I'd let slip away because I was too afraid to take a risk. The times I'd lied, the times I'd failed, the times I'd given up. I wanted to look away. My chest felt tight, my breath coming in shallow gasps. "I can't do this," I muttered, my hands gripping the sides of the mirror's frame. "It's too much." "You can," the angel's voice said, steady and unwavering. "Don't turn away now. Keep looking." I forced myself to stay, even as the mirror's reflection became almost unbearable. But then, something began to change. The scenes in the mirror didn't just show my failures and mistakes. They also began to show my strength. I saw myself comforting a friend after a loss, holding them as they cried. I saw myself staying up all night to finish a project, even when I doubted I could do it. I saw myself laughing with my siblings, painting in the quiet of my room, and standing up for someone when no one else would. For every moment of weakness, there was a moment of resilience. For every failure, there was a small victory. The mirror wasn't just showing me who I was, it was showing me everything I was capable of being. I felt a lump rise in my throat as I stared at the reflection. For the first time, I saw myself not as a collection of flaws and shortcomings, but as a whole person. Someone who had been hurt, but who had also healed. Someone who had made mistakes, but who had also grown from them. "This is who you are," the angel said softly, stepping closer. "Not perfect, not flawless, but enough." I turned to her, my eyes brimming with tears. I've spent so much of my life feeling like I wasn't good enough, like I was always falling short. She nodded, her expression gentle. And now, I look back at the mirror. My reflection was steady, unbroken. For the first time, I didn't see someone who was failing. I saw someone who was trying. And that was enough. I think I can move forward," I said, my voice trembling but sure. The angel smiled, and the warmth in her expression filled the room. "Then you're ready." As I stepped back from the mirror, the space around me began to shift again. The light grew brighter, the warmth more intense. But this time, I didn't feel fear. I felt a quiet, steady sense of peace. The angel reached out her hand, and I took it. Her grip was firm, grounding, and I felt a surge of gratitude for her presence. She hadn't walked the maze for me, and she hadn't given me the answers. But she had guided me to this moment, and for that, I was deeply thankful. "Where do I go now?" I asked. "That's up to you," she said. "But you've seen the truth. You've faced the things that were holding you back. And now, you can choose what comes next." Her words filled me with a sense of possibility, a feeling I hadn't experienced in a long time. For so long, I had been trapped by fear, by doubt, by the belief that I wasn't enough. But now, those chains were starting to loosen. I wasn't free yet, not completely, but I was getting there. The angel stepped back, her wings spreading wide. "This is your path," she said. "You found the way forward. Now all you have to do is take it." I nodded, taking a deep breath. The mirror, the angel, the glowing room. They all began to fade as a new doorway appeared before me, filled with light. I didn't know what was waiting on the other side, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I stepped through. The light engulfed me as I stepped through the doorway, soft and warm like the first rays of sunlight breaking through a cold morning. When the glow faded, I found myself standing on a bridge that stretched into the horizon. It was unlike any bridge I'd ever seen. Not made of stone, steel, or wood, but of light. It pulsed gently beneath my feet, as though it were alive, radiating warmth that seemed to flow into my very bones. Below the bridge was a river, but it wasn't water that flowed beneath me. It was light as well, shimmering and swirling in endless patterns, like threads being woven together into something greater. Tiny sparks of color danced within the current, and as I leaned over the edge to get a better look, I realized they weren't just random flashes. They were memories, not just mine either. The river carried countless moments, fragments of lives, flowing together in a way that was both chaotic and harmonious. A child laughing as they learned to ride a bike. A couple holding hands under a starry sky. A person sitting alone in a dimly lit room, tears streaming down their face. Every image was fleeting, appearing for just a moment before being swept away by the current. "This is the river of life," the angel said, her voice soft but steady as she appeared beside me. "It carries the essence of every experience, every choice, every memory." I turned to her, the bridge beneath us glowing softly with each step we took. "Why am I here?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. She gestured toward the bridge, her wings spreading slightly. "This is the way forward, but crossing it isn't as simple as it seems." I frowned, glancing ahead. The bridge seemed solid enough, and the glow it emitted was comforting rather than blinding. "Why not?" "Because to cross," she said, her voice gentle yet firm, "you must let go." "Let go of what?" I asked, though I already felt the answer forming in the pit of my stomach. She met my gaze, her expression calm, but unyielding. "Everything," she said. "The pain, the guilt, the anger, even the joy and the love. You can't carry the weight of the past into what lies ahead." I blinked, stepping back instinctively. "You mean forget everything?" "All of it." "Not forget," she said, shaking her head. "Let go. There's a difference. The past will always be a part of you, but holding on to it, clinging to it, is what keeps you stuck. To move forward, you must release it and trust that what lies ahead is enough." Her words settled over me like a heavy blanket. Let go of everything? How could I do that? My memories were all I had. They shaped me, defined me, told the story of who I was. Without them, who would I be? "I don't know if I can do that," I admitted, my voice trembling. "What if I let go and there's nothing left? What if I lose myself?" She reached out and placed a hand on my shoulder, her touch steadying me. "You won't lose yourself," she said. "You'll find yourself. The version of you that isn't weighed down by what was, but is ready for what could be." I turned to look at the river again, watching as the memories flowed by. Some of them felt achingly familiar. My own moments, my own choices, but others were foreign, glimpses into lives I would never live. The river carried them all without hesitation, without clinging. It simply let them pass, trusting that the flow would carry them to where they needed to be. I stepped closer to the edge of the bridge, gripping the railing tightly. "How do I do it?" I asked. "How do I let go?" The angel's voice was soft, but her words carried a quiet strength. "By accepting that you can't change the past. It's done. It's gone. But what you do now, in this moment, is what matters." I closed my eyes, letting her words sink in. She was right. I'd spent so much of my life looking back, replaying old mistakes, clinging to moments that no longer existed. It was exhausting, and it had kept me from fully living in the present. But letting go, that was easier said than done. How could I release the memories that had shaped me, the moments that had defined who I was? You don't have to do it all at once, the angel said, as if reading my thoughts. Take one step, start with one thing, and the rest will follow. I opened my eyes and looked down at the bridge beneath me. The light pulsed gently, as though it were waiting for me to decide. My hands clenched at my sides, and for a moment, I felt paralyzed by the weight of the choice before me. But then I remembered the labyrinth, the mirror, and the truths I had seen. I remembered the strength I had found within myself, the resilience I hadn't even realized I possessed. I had made it this far. I could take one more step. I took a deep breath and placed one foot on the bridge. The light beneath me flared, warm and comforting, and I felt a strange sensation, as if something inside me had loosened, a weight I hadn't even known I was carrying. The angel nodded, her wings spreading wide. That's it. Keep going. With each step I took, the bridge seemed to respond, glowing brighter, stronger. And with each step, I felt myself letting go, not of the memories themselves, but of the hold they had on me. The pain of my parents' arguments, the shame of my failures, the regret of opportunities missed, they were still there, but they no longer felt like chains. They were simply part of my story, no more or less important than the moments of love, joy, and triumph. As I neared the center of the bridge, the river below me seemed to grow brighter, the lights swirling faster. The memories within it were clearer now, more vivid. And for the first time, I saw the future among them, not in specific details, but in glimpses of possibility. A canvas waiting to be painted, a path waiting to be walked, a life waiting to be lived. I stopped in the middle of the bridge, looking out at the horizon ahead. The light there was so bright it was almost blinding, but it didn't scare me. It felt like an invitation. The angel appeared beside me, her presence steady and reassuring. "You've made it this far," she said. "Are you ready to cross?" I looked at her, then back at the river, then at the horizon. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel afraid. I felt free. "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "I'm ready." The angel smiled, and as I took the final steps across the bridge, the light enveloped me once more. And this time I didn't look back. When I stepped off the bridge, the light around me grew brighter, wrapping me in its warmth. It wasn't just light, it was a presence, something alive, something vast. I felt it pressing gently against my skin, soothing me, filling the cracks in my heart that I hadn't even realized were there. It wasn't blinding or harsh. It was welcoming, almost like an embrace. I stood there for a moment, not knowing what to expect. The bridge behind me had disappeared, leaving no way back, but I wasn't afraid. Somehow, I knew there was no going back, no need to go back. Whatever lay ahead, it was mine to claim. The ground beneath my feet felt solid, but I couldn't see it. Everything was bathed in golden light, shifting and shimmering like sunlight, reflecting off water. In the distance, faint shapes began to take form, soft outlines that grew sharper with each passing moment. A door appeared ahead of me. It was simple, made of dark wood with a brass handle, and yet it felt monumental, as though it held the weight of everything I had experienced so far. The light around it glowed brighter, almost beckoning me forward. As I approached, the angel appeared beside me. Her presence was as steady and comforting as ever, her wings folded neatly behind her. She didn't speak at first, just walked alongside me, her footsteps silent. "This is it, isn't it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded. "This is your next beginning." I stopped in front of the door, my hand hovering over the brass handle. "What's on the other side?" Her expression was calm, but unreadable. "That's for you to discover." I frowned, glancing back at her. "Is it life? Death? Something in between?" "It's not about what's on the other side," she said. It's about what you carry with you when you cross. You've walked the labyrinth. You've faced the mirror. You've let go of what was holding you back. Now, you get to decide who you'll be when you step through. Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I stared at the door, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it, the moment everything had been leading to. But instead of feeling afraid, I felt curious, excited even. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't dreading what lay ahead. I was ready to embrace it. Before I opened the door, I turned to the angel one last time. Will you come with me? Her smile was soft, almost bittersweet. No, my place is here, but you won't need me anymore. Her words stirred something deep inside me, a mixture of sadness and gratitude. She had been with me through every step of this journey, guiding me, pushing me when I needed it, comforting me when I thought I couldn't go on. The thought of leaving her behind felt strange, like saying goodbye to a part of myself. Thank you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. For everything. She placed a hand on my shoulder, her touch warm and steady. You found the way yourself, she said. I only showed you what was already inside you. Remember that. I nodded, swallowing hard, and turned back to the door. Taking a deep breath, I wrapped my fingers around the brass handle. It was cool to the touch, grounding me in the moment. With one last glance at the angel, I pushed the door open. The light on the other side was dazzling, and for a moment, I had to shield my eyes. But as it began to fade, I realized I wasn't stepping into another abstract space or glowing void. I was stepping into life. I was standing in a park. The grass was vibrant green, dotted with wildflowers that swayed gently in the breeze. Trees arched overhead, their leaves rustling softly. The air smelled fresh and clean, carrying hints of earth and blossoms. In the distance, I could hear the faint hum of life, voices laughing, children playing, the rhythmic thud of a jogger's footsteps on the path. It wasn't a grand, otherworldly scene. It was ordinary, familiar, and yet it felt entirely new. I stood there for a moment, taking it all in, the sunlight warming my face, the cool breeze brushing against my skin, the sounds and smells of the world around me. Everything felt sharper, brighter, more alive than I'd ever noticed before. I started walking, my steps light and unhurried. As I moved through the park, I noticed people passing by, families having picnics, couples holding hands, friends chatting on benches. No one seemed to notice me, but that didn't bother me. I didn't feel alone. For the first time, I felt connected to everything around me. As I walked, memories of my journey began to surface, not in a heavy or overwhelming way, but like gentle ripples in a pond. The labyrinth, the mirror, the bridge, they were all still with me, but they didn't feel like burdens anymore. They felt like lessons, like pieces of a puzzle I'd finally begun to understand. I thought about the angel's words, about letting go and moving forward. She had been right. Letting go didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean erasing the past or pretending it didn't matter. It meant carrying it lightly, allowing it to shape me without defining me. I reached a bench beneath a tree and sat down, letting the moment wash over me. The sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting dappled patterns on the ground. I closed my eyes, breathing deeply, and felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. As I sat there, a thought occurred to me, simple but powerful. I had spent so much of my life waiting for things to get better, waiting for the right moment, waiting for permission to be happy. And all that waiting had done was keep me trapped, stuck between living and merely existing. But now, I wasn't waiting anymore. I was here in this moment, alive and present. And for the first time, I felt ready to live, not just survive, but truly live. I opened my eyes, and the world around me seemed to hum with possibility. The park wasn't just a park. It was a beginning, a blank canvas waiting to be filled. I stood up, my heart light, and started walking again. I didn't know where I was going, but it didn't matter. The path would reveal itself as I went. All I had to do was keep moving forward. As I left the park, the sun warm on my back, I couldn't help but smile. I wasn't the same person who had started this journey. I wasn't trapped anymore. I was free. And freedom, I realized, wasn't about escaping the past. It was about embracing the present, about stepping into the unknown with an open heart and an open mind. I didn't know what lay ahead, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I was ready. I was finally alive,